want to talk a bit about my swords. When putting together this uniform, I had to have a sabre with it, of course. Hussars need their sabres. So I went through a number of different options before I was really happy with what I ended up with. One of the swords that I really liked was this. This is Charles de Gaulle sabre, I think. It's sort of known as a French officer sabre. I think this is made by Universal Swords. This was a design that was inspired by the sabres of French sabres of the 19th century, but it was popularised by Charles de Gaulle after the Second World War. It's quite a nice sword. The scabbard has these beautiful bronze parts here for the rings. The sabre itself has a brass 3-bar hilt. It balances quite close to the hand, so it feels quite light. It does not come sharp, but you could sharpen it up quite easily. It's not made out of stainless steel or anything like that. It's good sword steel. It's quite nice, and it goes well with this outfit, but it was not quite Prussian enough. So next up, I thought I'd turn to antiques. And this was what I came up with. I bought this from an antique firearms seller in the US, and I quite like it. Obviously this has a 1796 light cavalry scabbard here. You know that by the rounded drag. The style of the sword as well is inspired by the 1796 light cavalry sabre. You see the back strap here and the lobes, and it's riveted through the wooden grip here. Quite a nice sword, although it has a lot more hand protection than the 1796 light cavalry sabre, which only has a stirrup guard typically, and this has a steel 3-bar hilt with quite a long quillon there. The sword itself obviously has a 1796 light cavalry sabre blade as well, with the hatchet point there. It's very flat out here in the foible and quite bendy because of that out there, and quite a bit thinner over here, but generally it's quite a wide blade. It feels very good in the hand. I really love this sword. It was sold as a German dragoon sabre. That's just the general kind of thing they termed it as when they were selling it, but you know, who knows if that's what it actually is or was. I've only seen 2 other examples online. One was extremely rusty, and I should have bought it when I had the chance, but I balked because, you know, I already had this kind of sword. I didn't really feel the need for another one, but I should have. And I've seen another version that was quite nicely restored, very shiny, rather than, unlike this one, which is covered in nice stable black rust. And yeah, it would have been good to have, but there it is. So then I thought, well, it'd be nice to have a proper 1796 light cavalry sabre. So I bought this one from a West Point auction. Though it's not in great condition, what you'd expect for quite an old sword like this. The wooden grip is a bit chipped away. It's loose because it's lost a bit of material, as you can see. It would have had cord wrapping around there to give it the ridges, and then leather over the top. You'll notice from the scabbard that it has this triangular piece here, which indicates it's possibly a Blucher sabre, not a 1796 as it was listed as. But who knows, maybe it was put in another scabbard, because they all fit and they're all basically the same kind of sword. The blade is quite dark with nice stable black rust. So it's quite a nice sword. But I wanted something nice and shiny with my uniform. So what I got was a cold steel replica 1796 light cavalry sabre. And very shiny, rounded edge on the scabbard. Although you'll notice that the grip is not that of a 1796 light cavalry sabre. What I did was I customized it a bit. I got an antique 3-bar grip here. This is a British, I think it's probably 1821. That came flat, I had to bend it around, I had a jeweler to help me do that to make sure he was able to anneal it in a kiln, so it didn't have much cracking. And also fixing up any cracks that I did put in. Then I also had to carve down the wooden hilt quite extensively because it was really too chunky. Then I added my own leather because the cold steel leather was a bit rubberized. It's real leather, but not a nice surface like this. And then I added sterling silver hand-twisted wire around it. I tried using pure silver, but pure silver is not as good for twisting it. It tends to break quite a bit, so sterling silver is a little bit tougher. Just a tiny bit of copper added to it adds to the toughness, and I wrapped it around. Then I finished it off with a skull emblem on the grip here. That was that is attached to the screw that goes through there via laser welding. I've got a jewel to do that, and I think that looks, quite good. It fits in with the whole theme of this. I've got skulls everywhere. So that's how that all turned out. Now, cold steel swords get a bad rap, mainly because of their douchey advertising. But really, the blade, the whole sword itself, is not that far different from these originals here. It is a bit thicker and a tiny bit heavier. It's closer in weight and profile to the German dragoon sabre that I showed, rather than the 1796/Blucher. It's just a little bit heavier than the Blucher one, and still a little bit heavier than the so-called dragoon sabre, but not far out. It's within the range of probability that, it's not that dissimilar a sword. It cannot bend quite as easily up here in the foible because, again, there's a little bit more stiffness in this blade. And it does not feel that bad in the hand. It's not a bad sword. It came sharp, but there's a bit of a secondary bevel there. It's not that great a sharpening on this sword, although it's very easy to put a proper edge on there if I wanted to. It's just nice to be able to have a sword that is functional with this uniform, and it's also nice and shiny, so it goes with it quite nicely. The other thing I like about it is that it has a very thick, very wide scabbard and very thick blade, so it adds a touch of exoticism to this uniform. And that's what Hussars were all about. Often they had slightly more exotic swords than other units. In Britain, they had the 1796 light cavalry sabre, shared by all the other light cavalry. And later on, whatever other swords the light cavalry got, they got as well. But in other cavalries, they had things that were similar to Polish sabres, which, this isn't that dissimilar from itself. Also, shamshirs, they call them Mamluk sabres, which have quite a thin blade and a very simple hilt, but had retained a very exotic look compared to what other units had, and sort of furthered that exoticism that Hussars loved. So anyway, that's my swords. Well, those are my swords.